Okay, so we're going to be talking about tides. And we're defining tides as the periodic pattern of rising and falling ocean water. Let's write that down. In an earlier video, we were talking about how the force of gravity has an influence on tides. So specifically, the force of gravity of the moon and the sun is what is causing the tides on the earth. So let's write that down. Due to the gravity of the sun and the moon. But I'm going to underline the moon because the moon is playing a bigger role in the gravitational pull. Why? Because it's closer. Even though the sun is bigger, the fact that the moon is closer has a bigger impact on the Earth's tides. So we have two types of tides. We have high tides and low tides. Okay, and so this is going to be based on where the moon is. I'll show it for you. Okay, so here we have the Earth. Here we have the moon. The gravitational pull of the moon is coming from this direction. So what we're going to see is a bulge. Right there, the moon is able to exert the strongest gravitational force. So we're going to see a buildup of water on that side, and then we're going to see a buildup of water on this side. When we have the buildup of water, we have our high tides. So you can see that there are two high tides at the same time, and on the other sides, we have our low tides. So we have two low tides, two high tides, always on the opposite sides. So this bulge makes sense here. This is closest to the gravitational pull of the moon, so we are obviously going to have a bulge there. But in order to explain the bulge on the other side, the reason why we have a high tide on the opposite side of the Earth is the fact that the moon is also exerting a little bit of gravitational pull on the Earth. So as it is pulling the water, it's pulling the Earth. And we end up with excess water left on the back side. So we end up having two bulges on opposite sides and low tides on the other sides. So you will have two high tides and two low tides each day. Okay, and so this is specifically talking about just when we're looking at the moon's involvement. But when we start involving the sun's gravitational pull in this too, we get something called our spring tide and our neap tide. And so our spring tide is when we have the direct alignment of the moon and the sun. So we have our friend the Earth, we have the moon, and then we have the sun. So the moon exerting a gravitational pull in that direction. Sun also exerting a gravitational pull. So we get the combined effect of the moon and the sun. We end up with higher high tides than any other time. When they're in a direct alignment, we are getting the biggest force. We're going to end up with the most amount of water being pulled in that direction. Versus when we have a neap tide, we have the Earth, the moon, and the sun. So we have the gravitational pull in that direction. We have a gravitational pull in that direction as well. So we are going to end up with having lower high tides than normal because our forces are going in opposite directions and they end up canceling each other out a little bit. So we will have lower high tides. But the main thing to remember is that this is a periodic thing. It is happening consistently every day. It is the result of the gravity of the sun and the moon, but most importantly the moon.